Hello, I'm David Saunders, Head of Client Development at Connexo. In November 2019, we launched a report called The New Landscape, an in-house perspective, which looked at the challenges facing in-house teams and the solutions they were deploying to address those challenges. Today, we're going to look at those challenges and what has changed over the last 12 months. And to help us do this, I'm delighted to be joined by Helen Lowe, Head of Legal Operations at easyJet.
Hi everyone, as David mentioned, I'm Helen Lowe, I'm Head of Legal Operations at easyJet. I've been with easyJet since December. We are a team of about 70 overall. That's the whole of the General Counsel's Office function, which covers a number of different areas. The legal team itself is around 15 people, and there is also a claims handling team which comprises lawyers and paralegals, and they're about 20 or so people as well. So it's a reasonably big in-house legal team. Really excited to be here.
Thanks, Helen, and great that you're joining us today. I thought we could look at three key areas: work volumes and how they've changed over the pandemic, legal technology and how you're utilising technology, and team culture and how that has evolved over the last 8 months or so. So starting with work volumes, Helen, how has the nature of work changed during 2024 easyJet?
I think it's fair to say there's been a complete transformation in the work that we do. We were already thinking about how we structure the work that we do in-house and getting that balance right between in-house and outsourcing. But certainly over the last 8 months, we've seen areas of work grow that we hadn't even considered. It will be no secret in the marketplace that we went out for an RFP earlier on this calendar year, and we hadn't even included financing in there because it simply wasn't something that easyJet engaged in on any sort of scale, and that's completely transformed in the last few months. We've seen some really quite significant transactions go through, and so I think that reflects the real transformation in the types of work that we as a legal team are dealing with. What we've also seen is a business that's refocused itself entirely as a consequence of the events of the last few months. And so we're now looking at how we can best play in to support them. Projects that were seen as a huge priority 9 months ago have now been deprioritised. And other work is coming in at a rapid pace, and so we're having to make sure that we're equipped to respond to that, whether it's in the in-house team or whether it's by working with our partner law firms.
Are you seeing more work coming into the team with the same or reduced headcount?
So we are seeing more work coming in, absolutely. I think the volumes are much higher. I think organisations generally, I think, are a little bit more risk averse. Everybody's just trying to be that little bit more careful and make sure that we're getting the processes in place and we're following them. Unfortunately, yes, we did have a restructuring as part of the team over the summer. It's been well publicised in the press. We were very lucky in the team, and we have managed to hold on to the majority of people. So, we are dealing with a slightly reduced headcount, but we are absolutely facing into much higher volumes of work.
And are you finding new ways to tackle that volume? Are you using, for example, interim lawyers or alternative legal service providers, or looking for different things from your panel law firms?
So we are absolutely looking for different things from our panel law firms. I think that's a really interesting point. We had already taken steps long before we long before we knew COVID was a thing. I think COVID came so far out of nowhere that I think it caught all of us a little bit off guard. But we'd already started making plans about how the team should be shaped so that we could make sure that there were the right development opportunities there for the team, and that we could ensure that people had the opportunity to get involved in the sort of work that they really wanted to be involved in, that would help them to grow and develop, but would also deliver great value into the business. And so we were already reflecting on how we use our partner law firms and how we deploy them. One of the things that we've done as part of our recent panel exercise is actually bring in a value tier, and that's not something that easyJet had ever really done before, and that reflects the fact that we're really looking at how we can much more strategically outsource any work that needs dealing with. We're also very much in the early stages of working with an outsourcing support organisation who've provided us with some support, some paralegal support on some large transactions. And that's a very, very different way of doing things for easyJet. They worked alongside a Magic Circle firm and very closely. It was an absolutely brilliant experience. And that is something that's absolutely new to us. And so we are starting to have to reflect on how we can actually deploy what's out there in the marketplace at pace to deliver the right value into the business.
And overall, Helen, would you say the pressures increased in your team during 2020?
I think from a workload perspective, yes, because the pace has been so phenomenal. It's not just more matters coming in; it's the level those matters are at. You know, the amount of stuff that is hitting the kind of C-suite, the board, and are absolutely business critical is huge, and the pace at which they're having to be delivered is absolutely massive. I think the other aspect to that, you know, which we'll probably come on to in a little bit in terms of the team, is actually the impact of us all working remotely. It's a very, very difficult situation to be in, and I think we've all had our challenges with it at various points in time, whether they be technology or, you know, physical and actually getting up and moving around the place. But I think being disconnected when you're trying to deal with some really, really tough situations adds a layer of pressure that nobody's ever really had to deal with. You know, it's a different situation when you're in a deal room with, you know, your partner law firms and everybody's hunkering down and somebody's dashing out for 5 minutes to go and grab the coffees. That's a very different situation to all sitting in different locations across the country and attempting to face into some of the biggest challenges that an organisation's ever had to encounter.
Moving to technology, Helen, how has that played a part in your strategy during 2020?
I think it's fairly safe to say it started off playing a pretty fundamental part to our strategy. It was very much an objective that I was given when I joined the organisation back in December, was to understand the landscape, what we needed, and come up with a roadmap for how we deployed that technology. Which I did, and then in March I basically ripped it up. It became very, very clear very quickly that new technology wasn't going to be an option for us in the short term. The business has so many other priorities that it needs to face into, and trying to bring in any kind of, you know, workflow management tool or e-billing or anything like that was just going to be a stretch too far. And so what we've actually done is very much go back to basics. We've reflected on what technology infrastructure we've got in place in the organisation, not just in legal, but actually within other areas of the business, so in procurement and finance, and how we can leverage that technology to deliver value into the business and into the legal team. And I think it's really, really important to take that time to actually reflect. We've had to look at processes and consider what we've actually got in place. Does it work in a virtual environment? How will it work when we go back to the office? And how can we design something that is sufficiently flexible and agile to allow us to be able to do our jobs effectively, and that kind of facilitates processes? So that's very much a journey we're just embarking on at the moment, is exploring that technology and understanding what we can do with the infrastructure that we've got at the moment. There's so many exciting tools out there at the moment that we have already got, and we just need to actually start to leverage properly. I mean, I think everybody's talking about the 365 suite at the moment. There's so much that you can do with that. And in terms of new technology, that's very much something for further down the line when we'll work out where the gaps are.
So it sounds like fairly early days for you and technology and the legal team at the moment, Helen. But any lessons you can share with everyone on how to implement technology successfully?
Absolutely. I mean, I did technology implementations in my previous role with the co-op. And I think actually what we're doing at easyJet isn't far off what I would recommend that anybody does, is take a step back and think about what you're actually trying to achieve. You know, there's so many fantastic solutions out there that promise the earth. But if you're not actually going to use the earth, then do you really need them? You need to understand the problem that you're solving, what process you're going through to answer that question, and then you can work out what piece of technology is going to help you in answering that question, rather than just looking at something that's really exciting. I think it's also really important to consider what the overall ecosystem of your technology looks like. And I think that's not to get tied up in, all of the, well, will this interface with that other thing that I buy in 10 years time? But it's more about thinking, well, how are these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle actually going to fit together? And I think, that finally, and the most important piece is really people, and it's talking to people, it's understanding what they want, and it's bringing them on the journey and making sure that they understand why you're selecting what you're selecting, why you're meeting with the people that you're meeting with, bringing them into the conversations, getting them to ask the questions. Especially for me, I'm very firmly in the not a lawyer camp and wear my badge with great pride, but that does mean that I don't have the first idea of how to draft a contract, and I don't know how to use some of these tools in practice. And so get people in, get them to be ambassadors and embrace the change, and that'll make everything so much easier.
You've mentioned the team and culture earlier too, Helen, but can you just talk to me about how remote working has worked for the easyJet legal team? I
think it's fair to say that we've adapted to it more easily than we ever expected we would. easyJet's never had a presenteeism culture, and there's never been an expectation that everybody be sitting in the office. But what we've really seen is people just lift and shift straight from one place to the next. That's not to say that there haven't been challenges. Absolutely. Everybody's used to working on two screens, and when you suddenly discover you're at your desk at home and you A, don't have two screens, and B, don't have space to put a second screen up, things suddenly become much more challenging. I think trying to keep in touch with people is actually really, really hard. It's those ad hoc conversations that you have. We have our car parks off site, so we have a little bus that we get into the office, and it's really, those ad hoc conversations that you have on the bus on the way in, or when you're walking over to the terminal to get a coffee. Those are the ones that bind the team together and make sure that everybody kind of knows, has a sense of what's going on. And I think those are the things that we've really struggled to recreate and struggled to find a way to create that magic. And especially because of the challenges that the business has faced. We've all been working at breakneck speed. People have been on furlough. We've been through a restructuring. We have seen change in our business that it hasn't seen in the 25 years it's been around. And so I think it's almost more important to do it, but it's harder to do it when you're in that situation. And it's something that I think we're all, every organization, when I talk to my peers elsewhere, every organization is really struggling to create that little bit of magic that says it's not a 15-minute conversation about work or that's really structured. You're actually just taking 15 minutes out to have a bit of a chat.
Many general counsel and heads of legal ops are talking about the new skills that their teams are required to have working in this remote environment, and the skills such as an experience such as adaptability and resilience come to mind, but equally different sets of communication skills and influencing skills, because we're all operating in this remote way using Zoom and Teams. Is that something which you've considered as a team and have worked on?
It's something we've definitely considered, and we are continuing to consider. I think it's going to be an evolution over the coming months as we look at, as the dust settles of everything that's happened over the summer, and we look to next year and what we hope will be a recovery for everybody. I think we're all thinking about, well, how do we adjust through the winter phase, but then how do we adjust back into returning into work, because there's still going to be an adjustment there as well, even though it's going back to something that's very familiar. And I think that resilience piece is so fundamental. There's a phenomenal team at easyJet. They're absolutely incredible. They are super open to change. They are ready to embrace any challenge, and the fact that everybody basically just got up when we were put into lockdown and just left with their laptops and just cracked on. It was almost seamless. But I think it's really easy to overlook the importance of this and those contact conversations and making sure that you're putting checkpoints in the weeks so that people don't lose a sense of the structure. And one of the things that we're trying to do at the moment is trying to corral the working day a little bit, because what we've seen is with some of the work that we've been doing, you know, by necessity, the working day has expanded massively, as we all know it does when you're on a huge project. But we need to find a way to start to reduce that down a little bit so that people are getting time to spend with their families, time to spend relaxing with a book, time to spend going out for a walk. I know Micah goes out for a walk every single day for an hour, and did so even before she had a dog. So she, you know, I think it's so important to take that time out, and we're actively encouraging the team to do that, in particular through a wellness objective that we're setting this year as part of our goal setting. And I think that's, you know, that's a very open objective. We're not insisting that anybody does anything specific, but it's an objective that people can take the time to reflect on what they need to do to ensure that they maintain their wellness and their resilience throughout this really quite challenging period.
And finally, Helen, what are your predictions for 2021? What do you see as the strategic focus and the benefits of that for the easyJet legal team?
So I think certainly from a legal ops perspective, budget will absolutely be a focus. I think if I had a crystal ball for next year, I would, you know, God, I'd make millions. But I don't think anybody really knows. It's going to be the most unpredictable of years, as we've just found out over the last week. I think it's going to be a real focus on costs. And so for me, that's a case of balancing out the welfare and the well-being of the team against a naturally pressured budget from the environment in which we're operating. It'll be planning for the future. One of the most exciting things about a legal ops role and my role is it's a forward-looking role. I'm not in the mix. I get the chance to lift my head up and say, well, what does this look like? So for me, it's about looking to 2022 and thinking, what technology are we going to be putting in? What workflow solutions do we need to be thinking about? How can we make life easier for the team so that in the event that this situation arises in the future, or you know, in the event that we just go back to business as usual, and you know, we're just needing to make sure that we're doing more with less, as we have been doing for so long, that isn't applying undue pressure to the team, and that everybody's got the best opportunity to flourish through the support and the kind of the measures that I can try and put in place around it. So that's absolutely the focus for me, is really kind of looking forward to what's coming up. I'd love to have some predictions for 2021. I'm hopeful that if we have this conversation in 12 months' time, that it will be a very different conversation, and that we're all talking about the excitement of everything that's happened over the summer, and how we're going to use it as a springboard into the following year. But I'm quietly optimistic that there will be the opportunity to really implement some exciting plans. But who knows? Who knows?
Helen, many thanks for joining us today and providing fascinating insight into the world of legal ops at easyJet and your predictions for the next year.